is going to denial until the very fabric of reality spontaneously changes, because God knows that's more likely to happen than you admitting fault. Speaking as a person who is white enough to afford all the consoles, this is probably the most balanced generation of all time, with it all coming down to what you personally want from a console. The Wii is an excitable little yappy bastard, good with children but a little exhausting. The PS3 is a big dependable black monster, slow but lovingly bringing in your slippers every morning. And the 360 is just a good all-rounder that only occasionally pisses itself and dies. About a million years ago, a company called DMA Design created Grand Theft Auto and discovered that the combination of controversy, wacky humor, and vehicular homicide was a lucrative one indeed, so they made a whole bunch of sequels, threw some TVs out of some hotel windows, and changed their name to Rockstar, in a slightly overcompensatory effort to make us forget that they made Lemmings. Not that there was anything wrong with Lemmings, at least not until the franchise was rigorously milked to its last sour, lumpy dribbles. Thankfully, GTA's teeth seem to be remaining plump and fresh for now, with the fourth installment, or at least the fourth one with a number on the end. Apparently thematic indulgences like Vice City and San Andreas don't count, indicating that Rockstar subscribes to the Because I Say So school of sequel numbering, also known as the Resident Evil method. This year's morally flexible everyman is Nico Bellic, an Eastern European mercenary who was last seen helping overthrow the Combine in Half-Life 2 and who arrives as a penniless immigrant in Liberty City. As is always the case with this series, Nico must reach the top by climbing up a big pile of stolen cars, bodies, and escort missions. After a couple of jobs in which I drove my friends around and took one of them bowling, I embraced my new country by buying a baseball cap and some sneakers, deep-throating a hot dog, and slumping in front of some blisteringly awful television for a few in-game hours. It was at more or less this point that I thought to myself, hang on, am I playing Grand Theft Auto or Grand Theft Normal Boring Life? What's next? The write a letter to your mum mission? So I immediately ran outside, jacked a car, and ploughed through 2 mailboxes and an accountant. Instantly, the nearby policeman, who was clearly as impatient for this as I was, spat out masticated donuts and gave chase. Now we're getting back to what GTA is all about, I thought, as I turned into a pedestrian precinct, the background wailing of sirens adding a melodious backing to the rhythmic snaps of pelvises shattering against my radiator. Unfortunately, while steel lampposts snap off their housing when anything heavier than a kitten leans on them, Mother Nature continues to outdo human technology, and my rampage was brought to an abrupt end by the world's toughest poplar tree, causing Nico to go hurtling through the windscreen in a manner as wincingly painful as it was fucking awesome. But I was desperately attempting to restart the twisted metal salad that used to be my car when I realised I couldn't hear sirens anymore. Yes, it seems now you can shake your wanted level pretty much just by driving away really fast, which you think the police would be prepared for. Lose your pursuers, take a few turnings, and bingo, Nico Bellic model citizen. It makes sense in theory, but I felt somehow defeated as I sulkily went back to my cousin for more escort jobs. Once you inevitably grow tired of the sandbox mayhem and start on the mission paths, you'll find that GTA 4 is initially about as fast-paced as a Jacob Bronowski documentary playing at half speed. The first 100 weight of missions are virtually all tutorials, which highlights the inherent problem with incorporating so many different gameplay elements that you need to spend half the game explaining the bloody things. You have to learn how to drive cars, how to drive trucks, how to drive geese, how to use your phone, TV, internet, how to fist fight, how to gunfight, how to shoot from cover, how to shoot from the back of a giant Tyrannosaurus. The game doesn't really kick in for me until you get to the second safe house, and that's easily 5 to 10 hours of gameplay depending on how sandbox happy you are, so this is a game that requires a time commitment, and I mean a big one. If you have a day job, I recommend sticking a pillow up your jumper and claiming maternity leave. Once it gets going though, it's a rollercoaster thrill ride, a rollercoaster that stops dead every now and again like it's run by British Rail. I'm not sold on the TV channels because unlike the radio stations, they can't be heard while driving and hence come across as the game trying to distract you from actually playing it, like it's got confidence issues or something. Then there's the mechanic wherein you keep friendly with characters by taking them out drinking into shows and shit. I'm not sure what, if anything, it's all in aid of, but what with most people in the GTA universe committing 3 murders before breakfast, I've been trying to stay friendly with everyone I can. And what that entails is between every mission I have to give someone a call, drive over to their place, pick them up, drive them somewhere else, pretend to enjoy myself for half an hour, then drive them back. It's just an irritating, mindless chore. It's like we're getting off the roller coaster every 5 minutes to touch up the paintwork. GTA 1 was so wacky it was practically set in Toontown, and as recently as Vice City, the feel was still exaggerated and colourful. Since then, though, the series has taken a right turn at the corner of gritty and realism, which I'm not convinced is the best direction for it. As seems to be common with the current generation, realism means the graphics look like I'm viewing them through a used coffee filter. What isn't brown is grey, and what isn't grey is too dark to make out. I thank Christ for the automatic lock-on in the firefights, because all the enemies are indistinct dark blobs with an indistinct dark blob background. Driving feels more realistic, but with that slower and heavier, with all my attempts at handbrake turns resulting in spinning out like a merry-go-round. By the way, avoid the PS3 version because those marshmallow shoulder triggers certainly don't help, and the 6-axis is, as always, about as much use as smashing your hand between 2 bricks. But I think my biggest disappointment is that we're back in dreary old surrogate New York again, because all the way back to the GTA London expansion pack, a lot of the appeal of the series is the transplantation of the wacky gun fun into new settings like Vice City and San Andreas. Don't get me wrong, strip away the ancillary bullshit and GTA 4 is really good. I mean, I'm going to play with it some more after I'm finished reviewing, and that's fucking unprecedented, but frankly I'm going to reserve my enthusiasm for when they announce Grand Theft Biggleswade. Now that we've left GTA 4 in the dust and MGS 4 is still an overly verbose speck on the horizon, we enter the time of year known as the season of bugger-alls coming out. Too far from Christmas to be of any interest to publishers, so the flow of big-name titles slows to the point that internet game critics can relax a bit and indulge themselves with reviews of old games that interest them and no one else, either to bring exposure to an underappreciated gem or add a few bitch slaps that have managed to escape the first time around. So let's talk about a game I found in a bin. Painkiller is a first-person shooter from 2004 by Polish developer People Can Fly, perhaps best known for their previous title E.T. the Atari 2600. Not really, of course. Painkiller is the only game by People Can Fly, which makes it all the more amazing that Painkiller is fucking awesome and can kick the arse of most big-name mainstream titles and have them for breakfast afterwards, which is a shame because if the game blew goats I could have made a funny joke like Painkiller, you'll certainly need one. Painkiller is in the same bucket as Serious Sam, the original Dooms, and that it serves as an antidote to fancy pants complex modern FPSing. There are no stealth elements, no key hunting, no escort quests, no dorky support characters dribbling in your ear roll, no mission objectives besides kill everyone. There's just you, some guns, and the entire population of Murder Town between you and where you need to be. It's pure genocidal fun, which many FPS developers these days seem to think is somehow beneath them. Some people refer to Painkiller as the unofficial Doom 3, since the actual Doom 3 tripped over something in the dark, banged its head, and forgot that it wasn't System Shock. I'm not about to shake my walking stick and say FPSs were a lot better before they started putting on airs, but it is worth remembering that sometimes all we want is the relentless catharsis of old-school action gaming blended with the immersive greyish-brown of current-generation technology. And that's a niche Painkiller fills beautifully. It hangs out in the rough side of FPS town, where keycard puzzles don't venture for fear of getting curb stomped. That's not to say Painkiller is nothing but murdering tons of dudes. There's a series of unlockable bonus cards that make it easier to murder tons of dudes. There's a soul-collecting gameplay element that results in a new and interesting way to murder tons of dudes. Okay, so maybe it is nothing but murdering tons of dudes, but it does it so well, what more could you want? You can explore the levels and hunt for secret rooms and treasures if you really must, but if more than a minute passes without a duel and murder, you're not playing it right. It's like after the developers were resigned to making an unsophisticated shooter, they vowed to make it the most stylish unsophisticated shooter ever and spent all the leftover escort mission and fetch quest money on tarting it up. Levels range disjointedly from giant cathedrals to military bases, and the level design gives me a big fat architectural stiffy. There are over 50 distinct varieties of dude to murder, all amazingly well designed. They don't give me any kind of stiffy though, that would be gay. The weapons are a bold effort to escape the usual lineup of melee, pistol, shotgun, machine gun, rocket launcher, overpowered exotic thing that you never get ammo for and only use in boss fights anyway. The default melee weapon is the titular Painkiller, a rotating blade arrangement perfect for forecasting light showers of body parts and reenacting the lawnmower scene from the movie Brain Dead. That's dead alive if you're American and fat. As for the guns, I could mention the hugely satisfying penis extension gun that pins baddies to walls with entire trees, but all you really need to know is that there's a gun that shoots shurikens and lightning. I wish I could make something like that up. It shoots shurikens and lightning. It could only be more awesome if it had tits and was on fire. Amazingly, there is a story contained entirely within overlong between-mission cinematics in which concern a man resembling a shaved bear whose life is a cavalcade of success and happiness and sunshine and flowers before he takes one too many lingering looks at his sexy wife and smacks straight into a truck. Wifey goes to heaven while our hero goes to purgatory because God wants him to kill the generals of Satan's army who are trying to invade through some graves and blah-de-blah-de-blah. The story is entirely needless and entirely forgotten during the actual gameplay, but you wouldn't think it the way the cinematics bang on and on, emptying huge dustbins full of half-baked expositional dialogue into our screaming faces because they were determined to crowbar this shit in somewhere. Now, I'm one of the first advocates of games as art, so I like a good narrative, but anything in which you can make all the enemies limbs fly off in different directions is already a work of art. There are certainly plenty of criticisms aside from the fact that the storyline can go fuck itself. The criteria to unlock the bonus cards are obnoxiously difficult in some levels. Souls take ages to emerge from the corpses, so if you're trying to collect them, then you have to hang around your conquered foes twiddling your thumbs, which breaks the flow somewhat. The AI is pathetic, with enemies often getting stuck behind scenery while you throw bits of rolled up newspaper and laugh, but any criticism I find is immediately quashed when I remember that one of the guns shoots shurikens and lightning. So that's Painkiller, more proof that the best way to blow off steam is to blow off someone's nadgers.
The latest fads and trends, 'cause he's a dedicated follower of fashion. Oh yes he is. Oh, yeah.
I know what you're going to say. Yahtzee, reviewing a JRPG? Perhaps I shall quickly look outside to make sure the sky is not falling and the seas are not running red with blood. Ho-he-ho-he-ho. Well, you smarmy cunt, I had heard that the world ends with you does things differently to most JRPGs, and while I tugged that with mountainous piles of salt, I was intrigued when I noticed that it came out in the PAL regions before America, so I thought if the release dates are from Bizarro World, maybe the entire game is too, and will turn out to be the first good JRPG. Sadly, this uncharacteristic optimism started draining when I saw the box art and noticed that all the characters are undernourished teenage androgynes who do their hair in the morning by sticking their heads in buckets of lead-based paint and dress like they step kept on a landmine in a trendy clothes shop. But let's be fair, once I started playing I found it does do things differently to most JRPGs, it just doesn't do enough things differently. Things started well when I immediately identified with the main character, a sullen, hate-filled misanthrope, but sadly the developers seemed to think these were negative qualities, so before he could ascend the nearest clock tower, he was roped into a mysterious Challenge Annika-esque game where he has to complete arbitrary challenges on the streets of Shibuya or die, and he has to team up with a partner, partly to make the most of the DS dual screen, but mostly to teach him a valuable life lesson about friendship and acceptance and everything else Sesame Street used to bang on about whenever Cookie Monster wasn't around. The major thing that turns me off JRPGs, and a lot of games in general, is when I don't feel that I, as a player, am contributing anything to the story. All I ever seem to do is wheel the characters from one witty, boring dialogue to the next. Events are driven by their actions, not mine. All I am is a little angry id who takes over for the combat, spending the rest of the time jumping up and down in the back of the main character's mind, yanking on nerve endings, trying to make him stop acting like a killer. I'll tell you what I mean. At one point in the second part of the game, I was given the clue 30 plus 74. Assuming your brain is located inside your skull and not your rectum, you can probably hazard that this adds up to 104, which is the pretentious name of a pretentious clothes shop, my starting location. But I couldn't actually go there because the street was closed off. It only opened after I went to another nearby location and sat through another dialogue-heavy cutscene in which I was bold-facedly told the answer to the puzzle. This is not interactive storytelling, this is just reading. I know Japan has a very different culture to the West, but I will never understand why they like the visual novel style of game so much. The porno ones I can sort of understand, at least there's the promise of titties to keep you motivated, but most of them play like choose-your-own-adventure books with half the pages ripped out, which kind of goes against the whole idea of gaming. What I'm saying is that I like games where the story and gameplay go hand in hand, while in most JRPGs the story and gameplay are kept either side of a wrought iron fence made of tigers. Getting through the cutscenes is like eating a bucket of wallpaper paste, but once you finally struggle down the last few spoonfuls and move on, the combat is probably the best thing about the game, mainly because it's not turn-based and there are no random encounters. 2 automatic gold stars and their special score within the genre. Before fighting, you select a handful of badges that represent different attacks and activate them in battle by drawing on the touchscreen in their designated ways. The game does tend to frequently mistake one frantic scribble for another, and it seems to get really snippy about what constitutes a circle, but chances are you'll find there's a handful of attacks that work well together that you can pretty much get through the whole game using nothing but and let every other pin gather dust in the green room. An aspect that doesn't work so well is the fact that the game expects you to switch rapidly between 2 screens and 2 entirely different control systems throughout the combat, and I couldn't get the hang of it. Maybe my mind isn't as vast and evolved as JRPG fans, but it was just too much of a clusterfuck, and this is coming from someone who can beat Psychobilly Freakout on Expert. Fortunately, the computer will take over the other character if you can't be asked, and you'll get pretty much the same results, but just hangs a big question mark over the point of it all. Speaking of which, there's also a fashion trend system that changes your stats a bit if you wear the right label clothing and badges in the right parts of the city. I never really noticed any of it making much of a difference to gameplay, but I want to rag on it anyway because A, fashion victims are one step below nematode worms in the grand scheme of things, and B, like many ancillary JRPG elements, you need a fucking strategy guide spread across your thighs to make the most of it, and the only thing I like spread across my thighs is marshmallow fluff. But let's get down to it. Is TWEWY a good JRPG? I have absolutely no idea. I feel like I'm on the edge of a frightening world I don't understand, treading water on the surface of a deep, deep lake full of weird-smelling creatures with completely alien concepts of fun and tolerance for boredom derived from the man in the iron mask. There's too much dialogue, the characters are the same shallow stocks you get in every JRPG, and most of the gameplay outside the main story quest amounts to a big old grind sandwich. But working from the principle that these are all selling points for the intended audience, it's got an original aesthetic and the combat is okay, so if you're into this sort of thing, check it out. Now I have to go play an FPS before my body finishes absorbing my testicles.
Society. God save Donald Duck.
You know me, I'm a twitchy instant gratification kind of gamer, the sort who isn't happy unless there's a gun the size of a motorbike in his hands and a severed alien willy bouncing off the front of his space helmet, but every now and again the planets will align and I'll be affected by weird cosmic rays, and suddenly all I want to do is play a nice fantasy RPG, not a JRPG, god no, it's just space radiation, not the infinite power of Christ, but a Western RPG, something with goblins and swords and men in loincloths going on about wenches, so this time I pumped steroids into my video cards and had a crack at Oblivion. My only previous experience with the Elder Scrolls series was a brief spell of Morrowind during the previous planetary alignment, in which I ran around some muddy countryside in the rain for a few hours, fending off weird subhuman creatures, so basically it was just like Glastonbury Festival. In Oblivion, you start off in a dungeon in the Imperial Palace. You're never told what crime you committed. I guess you're supposed to fill in that blank for yourself, so I choose to believe I was in there for shagging the Emperor's wife and daughter at the same time while playing a rock guitar solo on the desecrated corpse of God. Anyway, then the Emperor showed up, played by Captain Picard, and I have to say I liked him a lot. He was the only character who actually seemed to know they were in a fantasy RPG. He took one look at me, noticed the camera floating behind my head, and said, "Oh bugger, you're the protagonist, guess I have to die now." And die he did, but not before giving me the address of a mate of his for a vital and world-saving quest I could maybe think about following in between looting bodies and fast travelling. I chose to play as a Nord, a race of brave William Wallace types big on football violence, and I picked specialisation in swords and heavy armour, partly out of a total lack of creativity, but mostly because I tried playing a mixed class in Morrowind and found that switching between magic and weapons mid-battle was as smooth and intuitive as shifting from fifth to reverse in a car with a missing gear lever. Oblivion's interface, however, seems a lot more user-friendly for a PC RPG anyway. I still had to check the manual to figure out how to fucking drop things, but if you can at least swing a sword without cutting your own legs off, then it's still a hell of a lot more intuitive than anything Richard Garriott ever made. But even if Oblivion had the most perfect interface ever devised to dispense milk and cookies while cooing gentle reassurances in a soft motherly voice, it would still be condemned by its biggest flaw. Let me tell you about immersion. Immersion is when you go for a midnight walk after a weekend marathon of Thief 2 and catch yourself looking for your visibility gem. Immersion is when you're playing Condemned and your cat suddenly jumps onto your lap only to be immediately launched off by a reflexive cannon-like blast of terrified piss. If a game can truly draw you in, it can make up for lots of flaws. Take something like Assassin's Creed, so stuffed with bad design choices they were leaking out of its pores, but I didn't despise it because Assassin's Creed presents itself so well, and if you go into it with the right mindset, it'll suck you in like $1,000 whore. Immersion can save the life of a bad game, and inversely, a lack of immersion can be a dogshit bullet right between the eyes. For a game that is obviously trying so hard, Oblivion is one of the least immersive RPGs I've ever played. The world map is huge, granted, if you intend to walk from one end to the other, you better pack a few sandwiches, but frankly, take one good look around the moment you first emerge blinking into the daylight, and you've pretty much seen everything. It's like they took 200 square yards of medieval English countryside, added a few wolves, then copy-pasted it until it was roughly the size of Yorkshire. Fortunately, you can bypass the insipid landscape and instantly teleport to anywhere you want, but that defeats the point of having a huge game world in the first place. I really hate to say this, but compared to that electronic smack addiction World of Warcraft, every territory has different terrain, colours and monsters, and the fast travel system, while badly in need of an in-flight movie, at least gives the impression of a huge epic world. Oblivion, by comparison, might as well be entirely taking place in the same fucking meadow. And then there are the characters. They all have this weird, stiff, unreal quality about them, indicating that Cyrodiil is apparently located inside the Uncanny Valley. And that's before you try to talk to them. Besides the main characters, there are about 100 million individuals with maybe 2 actual personalities between them, neither of which are particularly well characterized. One crazy beggar woman switched between a grackled drawl and a well-spoken aristocratic tone from line to line, so either she's pulling a very inept con or the dialogue assignment is fucked. The attempt to create a procedurally generated NPC conversation system was courageous, but then so is jumping into a skip full of used syringes. The tiny number of voice actors just makes it laughable, with characters frequently found conversing with themselves about how much they enjoy buying from the shop owned by themselves. On top of that, the endlessly repeated lines are so badly written and awkwardly delivered, it's like you're trapped in a middle school amateur dramatics production of The Lord of the Rings adapted for stage by a deaf budgerigar. Oblivion might be incredibly deep and full of interesting quests that all end with foxy night elves giving you soapy tit wanks, but it's all for naught because it just won't let me in. Whenever I thought I was starting to lose myself in the experience, some NPC would get stuck on a paving stone or force me to feed them that stupid conversation pie, and I'd come crashing back to reality where I am nothing more than an Anglo-Australian tit trying to outsmart a crowd with ones and zeros. The root of the problem is simply that they try too hard to impress us, so if nothing else, remember this: spinning a plate on a stick is impressive, but try to spin 3 at once and you'll just end up digging porcelain out of your face.
Now I'm a paraplegic and I know why, yeah, because I got high, because I got high, la la la.
I think it's safe to say that very few people were madly trampling babies underfoot to grab haze on launch day. I know whatever atrophied dregs of enthusiasm I had breathed their last when I glanced at the back of the box and saw that it was an outdoor first-person shooter about space marines. What does he fucking do, I thought. I looked forward to the vehicle section with horrible steering and spending half the game hiding under a table waiting for my health to regenerate. But then up popped the hateful little angel on my shoulder who spends most of his time talking me out of buying a Cornetto every time I pass a 7-Eleven. Shame on you, Benjamin Yahtzee Sebastian Godzilla Croshaw, spake he. Have you forgotten Call of Duty 4 already? You should give every game a chance to surprise you, or you're no better than those dipshits who never played Mass Effect but condemned it as some kind of child-corrupting boom extravaganza. I had to concede the point. It's not like there are many other games when someone can start toiling in my thighs for Agent Conan. So, Haze. There's this impossibly well-equipped corporate army king who don't represent the United States, honest, who invade some South American country and hit upon the world-beating idea of making their soldiers fight battles in a jungle environment with a bunch of glowing yellow lights strapped to their bodies. You start off fighting for the camouflages for sissies crowd, but about halfway through you realise that the huge faceless corporation who controls their infantry with addictive drugs might possibly be a teensy bit on the amoral side and decide that blindly following orders is a mug's game, whereupon you defect to the opposing guerrilla army to blindly follow their orders instead. An unusual plot, this would probably have had greater impact were it not given away on the back of the fucking box. The story is deeper than the usual kill everyone who is different towards military troops there, which I do appreciate. At the start of the game, your colleagues were a bunch of psychotic macho dicks, and it was a relief to find that I was supposed to think that, because I thought the same thing about my heroic squad mates in Halo, Crisis, Xerox, Quake 4, and pretty much every game in which large men stand around comparing willies. The main character of Hayes is characterized not as a wisecracking walking armory who lactates testosterone, but a naive, whinging college boy soldier who can't function without mugs of warm milk and the occasional cuddle, which gets a bit incongruous after he's mowed down enough people to populate Mozambique. The overall message of Hayes' story is that war is bad, and there are no true heroes when death is on the menu, but combining that with whiz-bang shooty fun strikes me as trying to have one's cake and eat it, a phrase I've never really understood. I mean, I think it's perfectly reasonable to want to eat a cake that you have. There's not much else you can do with a cake, except maybe hide in one if you're a stripper. Sorry, lost my train of thought. Hayes is a game that can't decide what existing FPS it wants to rip off the most. Halo is the obvious candidate. It's even got the same title, give or take 2 letters, and the driving sections are identical, right down to the design of the gravitationally challenged vehicles and the mounted turrets manned by tragic sufferers of the stupid virus. There's also a rusty old cargo ship level for fans of the one from Condemned 2, a very Quake 2-esque smelting plant, and most of the rest of the environments are straight out of the Crytek games, although it forgets the crucial jaw-dropping graphics aspect, as can be evidenced by the hilarious 2D map backdrops during the transport scenes that look like some guys are running past the chopper holding up cardboard forests on sticks. Hayes' one claim to not being the work of jaded hacks who could easily be replaced with a computerized FPS generator is the whole addictive drug business. When you're plugged into the heroin-o-matic, you can occasionally give yourself a quick fix to help out in battle, which strangely does not manifest as bullet time. Pretty much all it does is make the enemies light up like Christmas trees, which is admittedly pretty useful with current generation graphics being what they are, but then of course since drugs are bad, this all goes in the bin the moment you join the other side. Here a golden opportunity to deconstruct the genre by switching out the damage tanking gun fun for sneaky guerrilla warfare is tragically missed, resulting in the only change is that the team switched jerseys. Your new rebel allies suddenly gain the same regenerative powers the former squad mates did, whose powered armor simultaneously gains an inconvenient the nicest thing I can say that makes my giggle about Hayes is that it's at least functional, which is more than I can say for the film. But it's insultingly short and easy for a game that cannot play the goals when he went to the report a lot of Cornetto. If you have a liking for Halo, a crippling fear of trying new things, and a desperate need to get rid of all your money very fast, then you should probably think about getting yourself sectioned. But until then, you might as well buy Hayes, you mad bastard. It's funny how things stop being funny the longer you live with them. Everyone in Britain stopped sniggering at the name Spotted Dick by the time they turned 12. I've almost completely forgotten that Nintendo named a console after a bodily fluid, and it's funny how we can now hear the words Solid Snake without picturing the kind of throbbingly powerful erections you get from wearing skin-tight combat suits while hanging around women who never do their shirts up properly. Yes, Metal Gear Solid has joined Devil May Cry, Grand Theft Auto and Resident Evil in the elite group of series that have current generation installments with shiny glistening graphics and titles with ballers on the end. The series sells itself right there under the title as tactical espionage action, which implies a gritty, pulse-pounding, sneaky bollocks runaround, and while that's certainly present, it always seems to be occupying the same space as a stiff and inefficient third-person shooter and the paranoid manifesto of an internet conspiracy theorist with several gunmen short of a grassy knoll. I'm going to recount as much of the story as I can before my brain starts to hurt. Solid Snake is a cloned mercenary who is suffering from premature aging due to a planned obsolescence scheme worthy of Microsoft. He lives with his support character and best friend, Otacon, and the two of them have adopted a child together. That oozing sound you just heard was made by all the world's homoerotic fanfiction writers, simultaneously emitting torrents of hot lady spunk. Anyway, Solid Snake is tasked with the assassination of his evil clone brother, who is dead but lives on through his possessed arm, which was grafted onto the body of— oh Christ, I can't go on, this shit is bananas. Play the games yourself if you want to know what's going on, although I can't guarantee that that'll be enough. To truly get into the mindset of Hideo Kojima, you'll have to do something pretty drastic, probably involving experimental brain surgery and a complete X-Files box set. Kojima's problem is that while he's very much aware that games are a new and exciting medium for getting a message across, he doesn't have much patience for the whole game aspect. In the past, I've slacked off a lot of story-based games for having too much story and not enough game, but all those previous titles swiftly disappear beneath the waves of Metal Gear Solid's verbal diarrhea. I actually timed how long it took from pressing new game to engaging my first enemy. 23 cocking minutes, and this is supposed to be the fast-paced action hook to draw you in. Further on, some dialogues are long enough to warrant an intermission and refreshment counter, and most of them consist of the characters learning things that most of the audience figured out by the first trailer. The funniest part is, I was diligently sitting through all the cutscenes and I still wasn't sure what was going on. Somebody once said that a politician is a person who can talk for hours and never actually say anything. If that's true, Hideo Kojima could run for government as the Emperor of the Universe mid-afternoon. Every now and again, though, the game snaps you out of your exposition is used to practice and randomly lets you actually play it. And in these moments, the gameplay is adequate and clearly cluttered. Something on the game equivalent of Asperger's syndrome. The sneaking works well, but they load you down with a toy box full of gimmicky stealth tools and techniques that you will never ever need to use because you start off with a silenced tranquilizer pistol that can knock out enemy soldiers in one shot and never runs out of ammo, breaking the stealth gameplay over its knee with a sickening crunch. There isn't even much sneaking to do compared to previous games. When you're not tripping over cutscenes, the emphasis is more on the action than the tactical espionage, although it seems no one explained this to the gameplay programmer. The controls are much better suited for sneaking, and when action takes over, a million petty annoyances nibble at your shins. Having to press both shoulder buttons and triangle to aim and fire is not good design, and when you're ducking behind cover you have to stand up before you can fire back, which is a good way to get your moustache perforated. When you desperately need to immediately return fire, it takes a crucial agonising second to get Snake to ready his gun, presumably for fear of breaking a hit. Luckily this is compensated by the end of the legendary thick and armoured Thrasher. This is the part where I make gentle moves and reassurances to soften the game up before I drive the last stake through its heart. For all its frustrations, the gameplay is never flawed enough to be a deal breaker. If you're prepared to forgive the heavy cutscene to gameplay ratio, the characters are well-rounded and imaginative enough to keep you interested. But here comes the killing blow, children. Metal Gear Solid is and has always been very badly written, in the same way that the world's largest pie couldn't honestly be called a good pie because it's uneconomical and probably wouldn't fit in an oven. So much of the dialogue is redundant and is in dire need of an editor, preferably one armed with waders and pruning shears. I think it's safe to say that if you're not already a fan, you're not welcome at the MGS Sport Party. The game assumes you know and have accepted all the bullshit that's come before, and all the characters who haven't had a poignant death soliloquy yet show up, whether we like it or not, including Mr. and Mrs. Oh Christ Not You Fans Again from Metal Gear Solid 2. And since I hate redundant dialogue so much, I won't redundantly say that fans should buy it, because if you're a fan, you've already bought it, finished it, written a plot analysis guide for game packs, and are now hiding behind my house trying to decide which window to break. As for the rest of you, play through the previous games first and then check it out, assuming they don't bore you so hard that even your unborn children take up tabletop gaming.
I hope I'm old before I die. Well, tonight I'm gonna live for today, so come along for the ride. I hope I'm old before I die.
Our instincts.
The thought occurs that for all my banging of the games are art drum, art is only as good as the culture that surrounds it. The games give the most extraordinary emotional experience to the entirety of human culture and bring tears to the eyes of a faded war veteran with no eyes, but it's all for naught if it's not surrounded by self-important bearded tossers who bring so much into things for a little. Since I'm one of gaming culture's alpha self-important bearded tossers, I thought I'd discuss the trend of internet gaming humour, and by that I mean the trend of gaming webcomics, and by trend I mean plague. So you've looked at Penny Arcade, seen the massive amount of money, prestige and money those guys get for 9 panels a week, and decided that you want in on that. Many gaming webcomic artists have thought the exact same thing. In fact, let's not beat around the bush, all gaming webcomic artists, except Penny Arcade, obviously. The first thing to do is to be or move in with someone who can draw, forcefully if necessary. If you don't know anyone who can draw, and you yourself draw like a flipper-handed freak child who just discovered MS Paint, don't fret, just write excessive amounts of dialogue and hide the hideous art with huge speech bubbles. If you don't know how to draw or write, are a functionally retarded quadruple amputee and can only communicate by banging your head against a Wacom tablet, that's still no reason to quit. You can wipe your ass with a page of Mega Man sprites, and there'll still be someone on Comic Genesis who'll tell you that it's brilliant. The next thing you need to do is create your main character, and since it's important to write what you know, the main character will obviously be you. But while you are a repressed, socially retarded dullard who's no one would ever honestly admit to liking, your author insertion character is a fantasy, so they will be a charismatic eccentric who is unconditionally loved by everyone. Setting their dog on fire. The secondary character is a straight man whose job it is to play comic foil to the other character's bullshit and inexplicably tolerate his behaviour when any sane person would be checking a room for rent pages with one hand and slamming the idiot's face in a drawer with the other. The third character is the girl. You know girls, those mysterious creatures you see on the bus who have their own bathrooms and spray stingy liquid in your face. If you don't know much about girls because your conversations with them don't last more than a few minutes before the police are called, just use your mum as a frame of reference, characterising the female as a disapproving, eye-rolling nanny who tolerantly wipes up the whoopsies of the idiot man-children and chastises them with the occasional spanking. And since your ego should be swelling nicely by this point, she should also become the main character's girlfriend somehow, because she finds something adorable about the way he gets hypnotised by her breasts. Now you have to make your comic funny, and reading most existing webcomics, one could be forgiven for thinking that humour is entirely optional, but believe it or not, there are people who laugh at that stuff, even if it's just the author's mum. Fortunately, the advantage of running a gaming webcomic is that gaming humour is incredibly easy. All you have to do is apply video game logic to the real world for comic effect. For example, in, say, Gears of War, you have to push the analog stick to move forward, when in real life you have to continually put one foot in front of the other. This might not sound like A material, but trust me, phrase this right and there's a fortune to be made in cafe press shirts. If that doesn't work, go for the edgy crowd and do a comic implying that Mario does Luigi up the arse. And if that doesn't work, just go on about the cake being a lie. So, now your comic is squatting on the internet like a sewage plant on the River Thames, but you're still not popular because you're competing with every other hack with a PlayStation and a Messiah complex, so how do you stand out against the crowd? Well, you're forgetting the most important ingredient, drama. I'm not talking about dramatic storylines, although that's certainly part of it. Let's say for example, that your super basic jokes and suddenly do a serious storyline about your female character having a miscarriage. Obviously, you need to have several blood clots in your brain to think this is a good idea. You're established as a wacky humour comics, this is going to be an awkward tonal shift at best, and deeply disrespectful to subject matter at worst. Your most hardcore supporters will feebly attempt to go along with you on this, smiling nervously at each other as they would around a mentally unstable friend with a shillelagh, but mean-spirited embittered cocks are going to call you out on this. At this point, there are many ways you can respond. I don't see you doing anything better, I can do whatever I want with my comic, you're just jealous because I get more readers, and other equally flawed arguments, but above all else, never admit defeat, because the bigger a douche you are, the more traffic you get as spectators line up to see you jump around the monkey cage, screaming and flinging your poo. Drama is the mortar that holds the webcomic community together, and there are so many wonderful ways to create it. Make absolutely no effort to improve your horrible drawing style, act like a prick at a convention, respond to constructive criticism with hostility, and just generally behave like the kind of monstrous egotist that blossom like mushrooms in the darkest pot of shit that is the internet. And if anyone really pisses you off, depict them in your comic as a ridiculous straw man and mock them with infuriating self-righteousness. You know, kind of like exactly what I'm doing now. So your gaming webcomic package is complete. All that's left to do is gather it all together and throw it in a fucking bin, because you're a talentless cultural pollutant who deserves to suffocate to death on a bag of porridge. There comes a time when you have to stop ignoring something, a lesson that could well have been learned by those people who lived next door to Auschwitz and thought all the smoke was coming from an unusually screamy pie factory, which by the obvious link of Nazi Germany brings me effortlessly to LEGO Indiana Jones. I've been ignoring the whole LEGO LucasArts coalition so far, partly because, as you'll recall from my Psychonauts review, LucasArts is run by douchebags, but mainly because it sounds utterly retarded on paper. I mean, once you accept LEGO Star Wars, where does it end? Playmobil Battlestar Galactica? Duplo Firefly? Meccano Dune? Yeah, I'm done milking that joke. I guess at first I'd... Wait, I've got another one. Stickle Bricks Babylon 5. Sorry. I guess at first I'd filed LEGO Star Wars in my massive brain database under the same heading as Barbie Horse Adventures and Bratz Hey Kids Let's All Dress Like French Tarts, cheapo toy tie-ins for harassed mothers to buy their shit-faced spawn every time they pass through a Walmart, in an ongoing quest to give in to their every demand and turn them into kind of entitled, spoiled fuck spots who are virtually guaranteed lucrative acting careers in Hollywood. But now that the series is 3 games and people I sometimes pretend to respect have said that they might actually be fun, I thought I'd better go undercover, drill holes into my head until I'm mentally 12 years old and try out the new Flippity Gombo sledge. LEGO Indiana Jones is exactly what it says on the tin. It's a heavily summarised refit of the first 3 Indiana Jones movies, or should I say the only 3 Indiana Jones movies, and if anyone tries to correct me, you are wrong and should be punched, with all the characters replaced by choking hazards for the under 5s. Obviously Indiana Jones is a different kettle of chimps to Star Wars, though, what with the death and face melting and all that business with the monkey brain, so the most sofa-hiding moments of the trilogy are toned down to be kid-friendly, LEGO characters being as unfazed by dismemberment as the drugged-up prostitutes in my van. Don't write it off as a kiddie game, though. It's important to understand the distinction between kiddie and fun for all the family. The latter is stuff anyone can enjoy, as long as they're not the kind of slap-jawed sociopath in waiting who refuses to look at any game that doesn't have at least 3 police officers with a blood. So if you're a child or possess the necessary brain damage to be the equivalent of one, you'll find LEGO Indiana Jones to be colourful and full of lovely shiny objects to keep your laughably small brain occupied. As for adults and clever clogs, some of the attempts at humour fall a bit flat, but if you take a step back, there's this undercurrent of parody about the whole experience which I find rather cathartic. I guess it's because we're taking a film series which prided itself in unexpectedly traumatising me as a child and totally emasculating it like if there was a puppet show version of The Ring. The gameplay is where the game starts to soil itself, but in small manageable ways like a budgerigar. It's based around platforming and Zack and Wiki-esque adventure puzzles in which Indiana Jones and one of his mates use whatever resources are available to get to the level exit, defeat a boss, and or fill their plastic pockets with enough Spanish gold and sink Lusitania. The support characters all have their own unique skills to bring to the fray, but their main job is to irritate you. Standing on a platform you're trying to occupy and knocking you off into death pits is their favourite trick, which only gets more hilarious when the game, which seems to be in on this, gleefully respawns you in such a way that you slide straight back into spiky failure. Thankfully you can kill your partners as many times as you like and the game won't punish you for it, and let me tell you, brutally beating Short Round into a pile of bloody plastic giblets 14 times removes all feelings of antipathy you've ever had towards the character. Depending on how charmed you are by the overall feel, the combat is either lackluster or a flaming pile of arse. A brave attempt is made to evoke the feel of Indiana Jones-esque brawls by letting you throw chairs and bottles around, but I guarantee that the auto-targeting system will ignore the gun-wielding, blood-crazed Nazi in favour of latching indelibly onto the crumbs of cheese upon the whiskers of a nearby mouse. There's really no reason to use anything other than bare fists, which can swiftly reduce any enemy to tiny component parts that your dad will later painfully discover by walking around the living room carpet barefoot. At this point the game says, "What's that? You favour bare fists? Well, fuck you with great big handfuls of rusty nuts and bolts, you consumer tart, because we're going to use whatever tool you happen to be carrying as a melee weapon. Oh, you want to know how to drop the tool? Well, you can't, so suck it." Then the game jumps around snapping his bum and laughing, but I don't let him get to me, because for committing the cardinal sin of infinitely respawning enemies, I know the game will be condemned to the deepest circle of video game hell. While their tendency being cock-snapping and colossal point of death wang at the adversary is a fate which is deserved by all the franchise-aside movers, LEGO Indiana Jones could possibly be forgiven for a lot. Multiply the Indiana Jones nostalgia factor by having to enjoy adventure game scavenger hunts, and divide by the number of times falling off the floating platform levels and Mario Sunshine made you want to slice your own face with a broken wave-boot controller, and you'll get a number which somehow corresponds to how much I recommend LEGO Indiana Jones. I'm not a mathematician, obviously, but I have fun with it, and so might you. It'll certainly tide you over while we wait for the really hot release, Fuzzy Felt Deep Space 9.